The Courage to Be Me is an illustrated book that I have recently published that is about life after sexual abuse. So in the book, we meet a group of women who are beginning to rebuild their lives after experiencing rape or sexual abuse. And we find out what their fears are before therapy. We find out what it was like to meet each other. We find out what it was like for them to learn more about recovery and how all of this helped them find the courage to start rebuilding their lives. It's a book that makes me smile and cry at the same time. I've had people come up to me afterwards and say, "I really enjoyed reading your book," and they say it like they feel bad for saying that. But actually, to me, this is a book about telling a very human story about courage, self-compassion and hope. It's the kind of book that when I read it, I normally have a lump in my throat and tears in my eyes, but a big smile on my face. I've written the book for anyone who's experienced rape or sexual abuse. We don't really tell any stories about life after abuse, which means that lots of people out there who've had this experience are living with it in isolation, thinking that what happened to them or how they've responded to what happened is weird or unusual. They can feel very isolated, which to me just makes the whole thing doubly tragic. It's tragic that they were abused, and then it's tragic that they're living on their own in isolation with it, when the truth is they're not alone and help is out there. This book was inspired by a research project I was doing with these amazing women who were telling me their stories of beginning to rebuild their lives after sexual abuse. And I was capturing all these stories that they were telling me about their experiences in therapy and how they felt before they went to therapy and these kinds of things. And these women were amazing. When you work in the area of rape and sexual abuse, I think a lot of people think about the dark and the toxic elements of abuse, and that's definitely part of the space. But there's this other side of it that those of us who work in the field get to see from time to time, and that's just people being amazing. And that's what these women were doing. Their courage they showed me when they were telling me their stories was, it got under my skin. And I wanted to do a lot more than just simply take their stories and put it in a research report. I wanted to create something that celebrated their courage, something that other people could connect with, and something that would give other people a reason to feel hopeful. The cartoons, yeah, it's not like the obvious medium, is it? Although, actually, I think maybe, to me, it is obvious, because if something is very difficult to understand and it's emotionally challenging, cartoons are actually the perfect medium to use because they're really gentle and human. I think the most powerful way to communicate is when I'm able to use the human in me to touch the human in you. This is something that I guess artists are always doing. I think something interesting happens when a psychologist embraces that way of communicating because of the types of stories I'd like to tell. And I think that's one of the reasons why the book works, because it's both easy to understand, but you can actually connect with these characters and empathise with them. So instead of just giving people information, as an author, it means I can give people an experience. And I think saying to somebody, you are not alone, is a great message, but actually making them feel like they're not alone, that's more powerful. The feedback I've been getting about the book has been quite overwhelming. I have had some amazing emails from people. I had one woman who emailed me, and she said that she'd given up, that she thought she would take this to the grave with her, but she'd found my book. And she'd done the one thing that she thought she would never do. She'd signed up for counselling. I had another woman contact me and say that she read the book and her husband read the book, and that they were both in tears because for the first time they could understand why this was still having an effect on their lives. So getting that kind of feedback is amazing, and I had an idea of what I hoped the book would do, and messages like that help me know that it is doing what I hoped it would do. But it just makes me more determined to get the book out there so that I can connect it with its audience. when I sat down to write the book, I thought about the women that I'd met in the research interviews, and I thought about their strength and their courage. And I wondered, were they able to see that in themselves? And I imagined somebody sitting opposite me, someone who had experienced abuse but had lived with it for years in isolation. And I thought, what would I want to say to that person? And I would want to say to that person that I hate what has happened to you, and I can see your pain, but I can see something that maybe you haven't seen for a long time. And rape and abuse can take so much away from you, but there's one thing that it can't take. It can't take away you, your humanity, your potential, the person you can become. And so I think the message that I would like to get out there is summed up on the front cover of the book. To me, that front cover says, you are bigger and more beautiful than you realise. I see it. Let me show you what I see.